Imagine for a second that you are trying to navigate through a sprawling, ancient, incredibly complex living ecosystem.
Right. Like a really dense jungle.
Yeah, a jungle or maybe, a massive layered metropolis with subways and overpasses and all these hidden alleyways.
Okay, I can picture that.
But the only map you have in your hands is this piece of paper that just shows flat, empty, two-dimensional space.
Oh, wow. That sounds useless.
Completely useless. There are no elevation markers, no rivers, no warnings about where the ground gives way, and definitely no indicators of who actually lives there.
So you would just be walking right into walls.
Exactly. You'd be stumbling into rivers, completely missing the actual life happening all around you. You'd be essentially navigating an illusion.
Right.
And right now, thousands of well-meaning institutions, specifically, as we're going to explore today, churches are trying to save their communities using that exact same blank piece of paper.
Which is just a wild concept when you really think about it.
It really is. So this deep dive is about why we are structurally blind to the suffering happening right outside our front doors. And, how a profound shift in human attentiveness can completely change that.
Yeah, and the source material for this is incredibly insightful.
It is. We are unpacking the insights from Mapping for Mission, Seeing What We've Overlooked by Chris R. Villasis.
Such a good text.
And the mission here is to uncover the vast canyon-sized difference between merely looking at a community and actually seeing it.
Right, because looking and seeing are two completely different things.
Absolutely. Okay, let's unpack this, because understanding how we misread the spaces we live in every day will completely upend how you view your own neighborhood.
Yeah, I really think the central premise we're dealing with here is incredibly jarring, but it's vital.
How so?
Well, the greatest barrier to effectively reaching people to authentic mission, it isn't external hostility.
Right.
It is not some, massive cultural shift against an institution. The ultimate barrier is internal blindness.
Internal blindness.
Yes. And this is not framed as a simple strategic misstep, like a poorly planned marketing campaign.
It's deeper than that.
Much deeper. It is an absolute, profound, moral failure to perceive reality.
Wow. Internal blindness. Because, when you see a church or an organization failing to connect with its neighborhood, I think the immediate assumption is just a lack of care.
Oh, for sure. That's what everyone thinks.
Right. We look at an empty community center or a totally disconnected congregation and assume the people inside simply lack sincerity. They just don't care enough.
But that is the exact trap. And the data patterns we see in the book completely contradict that assumption.
Really?
Yeah. Institutions do not typically fail because they lack sincerity. They fail because they lack sight.
Oh, that's a crucial distinction.
It is. I mean, you can find congregations that are just bursting with energy. They fund massive programs. They mobilize hundreds of volunteers every weekend.
They're printing thousands of flyers.
Exactly. Their doctrinal teaching is flawless.
Yeah.
They're doing everything, quote unquote, right on paper. Yet, they remain entirely disconnected from the actual lived reality of the people breathing right outside their stained glass.
So they're missing the people completely.
Completely. They might be delivering a technically perfect sermon while remaining completely oblivious to the lonely, the skeptical, the wounded, and, the financially ruined individuals who walk past their property line every single morning.
So what does this all mean? How does a group of people who presumably dedicate their lives to wanting to do good become structurally blind to the good that needs doing within a 100-yard radius?
Well, it happens through habit, not malice. It's what the author calls the sincerity trap.
The sincerity trap.
Yeah. This blindness grows slowly through 4 distinct sociological and psychological mechanisms.
Okay, let's break those down. What's the first one?
The first is inward focus. Think about the life cycle of any institution.
Right, like how they start versus how they end up.
Exactly. A church starts with a mission to the outside world, but very quickly it acquires a building, a budget, and staff.
And then the maintenance begins.
Right. Suddenly the roof leaks. That's a $50,000 repair.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So the board meetings, which used to be about feeding the neighborhood, are now entirely consumed by capital campaigns.
Just to keep the lights on.
Exactly. Retaining members just to pay for the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Over time, the institution becomes entirely preoccupied with its own survival.
So the lens through which they view the world narrows?
Yes, until they only see people as potential resources to keep the internal machinery running.
Man, the survival of the organism becomes more important than the purpose of the organism.
That's perfectly said.
You stop asking, how do we serve the people out there, and start subtly asking, how do we get people in here to fill these seats and meet this budget?
Exactly. And that inward pull feeds directly into the second mechanism, which is familiarity.
Familiarity, like
Yeah.
just being used to a place.
Yeah. There is a deeply ingrained assumption that if an organization has been in a specific location for a long time, it automatically understands that location.
Oh, I see.
But let's look at how cities actually function. Neighborhoods are fluid.
Right.
They change constantly.
Right, like the local factory that employed half the congregation closes down.
Exactly. Or the local economy shifts from manufacturing to service. Real estate prices spike, driving out blue-collar families.
And bringing in young, affluent professionals.
Or conversely, an area becomes zoned for high-density housing, bringing in a massive influx of new immigrants.
So the whole demographic shifts beneath their feet.
Yeah, and a church can sit on the exact same corner for 50 years, operating on 50-year-old assumptions.
Wow.
They keep running programs for a demographic that literally packed up and moved away 2 decades ago.
They're using that outdated flat map.
Exactly.
It's like living in the same apartment building for a decade. You know the mechanics of the building. You know what time the mail arrives, which stairwell has the draft.
The exact sound the elevator makes when it gets stuck on the 3rd floor.
Right. You confuse that mechanical proximity with actual human perception. You know the building, but you have zero idea that the guy across the hall is in the middle of a devastating divorce.
Or that the elderly woman on the 1st floor hasn't spoken to another human being in 6 months.
Man, that is so true. We completely confuse proximity with true perception.
And that leads to the third mechanism causing this blindness.
Which is?
Spiritual routine divorced from spiritual sensitivity.
Okay, unpack that for me.
Well, you can master the logistics of religion. You can know exactly how to execute a flawless hour of Sunday programming.
How to manage a spreadsheet of 50 volunteers.
Right. And how to teach a curriculum. But that mechanical mastery actually dulls your ability to listen.
Because you're just on autopilot.
Exactly. The historical data on the Pharisees is the perfect case study here. They were the most disciplined, informed, highly religious people of their era.
Right.
Yet, the historical critique of them, particularly by Jesus, was that they were completely blind to mercy and justice.
Because they were obsessed with the rules.
Yes. Their error wasn't a lack of religious activity. It was a complete and total lack of discernment. They knew the rules, but they could no longer see the human beings in front of them.
Which brings us to the fourth cause, and this one is purely psychological, isn't it? Fear.
Yeah, fear is perhaps the most powerful driver of blindness. Seeing people clearly is incredibly costly.
Because empathy takes a toll.
Empathy is an exhausting burden. If you look at a community and you actually let yourself notice the pain, if you truly see the broken families, the parents working 3 jobs just to keep the lights on.
The teenagers slipping into addiction.
Right. If you see all that, you are suddenly responsible for it. True sight creates immediate moral obligation.
Oh, wow. So we choose not to see because we don't want the obligation.
Exactly. For many institutions and for individuals, blindness acts as a subconscious defense mechanism.
It is psychologically safer to not see the starving person.
Because if you see them, your Saturday is now spoken for. Blindness protects us from being fundamentally inconvenienced and changed by the suffering of others.
Okay, but if I'm listening to this right now, I might be thinking, well, I barely have time to manage my own life. I'm busy.
Right.
And aren't these organizations at least doing something? Let's take a generic food drive, for example.
Okay.
Even if a church is a bit blind to the deep sociological nuances of their zip code, they are handing out canned goods, they are hosting a community picnic. Isn't a blunt, generic action better than sitting around paralyzed by analysis?
It's a pragmatic argument, for sure. But we have to look at the psychological damage of generic ministry.
Damage.
Yeah. Activity is often used as a substitute for obedience.
Yeah.
It's the noise we make to drown out the fact that we don't actually know our neighbors.
Oh, that's heavy.
Look at the historical pattern set in the text of Matthew 9:36. Jesus looks at the crowds, and he doesn't just see a demographic to be managed.
He sees sheep without a shepherd.
Right. He discerns their specific underlying condition,
Yeah.
which is exhaustion and aimlessness.
So he actually sees them.
Yes. When an organization runs a generic food drive without knowing the community, they are treating human beings like interchangeable units of need.
Like, you are hungry, here's a can of beans, transaction complete.
Exactly. It fills the stomach for 24 hours, which has baseline value, but it does absolutely nothing to build trust.
It doesn't uncover why the person is hungry to begin with.
It doesn't address the hidden wounds of shame or systemic poverty. It communicates, I have a program and you fit the parameters of my program.
But it does not say, I see you.
Right. Generic ministry, because it fundamentally ignores the specific dignity of the individual, rarely becomes transformative ministry.
It just remains mechanical.
And mechanical outreach cannot reach the human soul.
So if activity isn't the cure, if running faster on the hamster wheel just makes you a more tired, blind hamster, then we have to look at the faulty foundation all this generic activity is built on.
And that foundation is assumption.
Assumption. This is the core battleground, right? Assumption versus discernment?
Yes. When you analyze ineffective outreach, you find it is almost entirely built on assumption.
An assumption is dangerous,
Assumption is arrogant. It says, we already know what these people need.
whereas discernment is humble.
Exactly. Discernment asks, let us sit and listen first. Assumption operates on a corporate franchise model,
Like saying, this youth program worked in a wealthy suburb of Dallas, so we will aggressively deploy it in a working-class neighborhood in Detroit.
which is absurd. Discernment asks, what is the unique dynamic happening right here on this specific street corner at this exact moment in history?
Assumption asks what the organization can deliver.
While discernment asks what the organization must first understand.
This boils down to reductionism, doesn't it? The danger of assumption is that it flattens wonderfully complex, multi-layered human beings into broad, easily manageable categories.
Exactly. It slaps labels on people.
Like the youth, or young professionals, or the unhoused.
When you categorize people that way, you are stripping them of their humanity to make your own logistics easier.
You are turning a person into a data point on a spreadsheet.
Yes, a person with a unique childhood, specific trauma, distinct talents, and deep fears. It is highly efficient for running an organization, but it is entirely dehumanizing for the people you are supposed to be loving.
And discernment is the opposite of that.
Discernment is a rigorous, spiritual discipline of sustained attention. It honors the dignity of the person by honoring their specific story.
So it forces the leader to ask the difficult questions.
Right. Like what specific betrayal shapes this person's inability to trust authority? Or what specific hopes get them out of bed in the morning?
It's the difference between a doctor who walks into the exam room, barely glances up from their tablet, and just writes a blanket prescription for antibiotics because, there's a respiratory bug going around.
Versus a doctor who actually looks at you.
Exactly. Versus one who sits down, looks you in the eye, asks about your specific environment, your family medical history, and runs targeted blood work.
The first doctor is operating purely on assumption.
And that assumption is dangerous. If you actually have a viral infection or an autoimmune flare-up, those antibiotics don't just fail to heal you, they can actively destroy your gut biome.
And build up resistance to the actual cure you might need later.
Right. And worse, the patient leaves feeling completely unseen.
That medical analogy maps perfectly onto the theological framework we are discussing. The divine pattern is never generic.
No, it's always specific.
When you analyze the historical texts, God never sends out a mass generic memo to humanity. The divine always interacts with the profoundly specific.
The data points on this are fascinating. Like, God approaches Abraham by establishing a highly specific family covenant.
Yes.
He speaks to Moses through a burning bush in the middle of a desert, utilizing Moses' specific current reality as a shepherd.
And Jesus calls Zacchaeus out of a specific tree, addressing him by name.
Right, understanding his specific social standing as a despised tax collector.
He extends grace to Mary. He offers highly personalized restoration to Peter based on Peter's specific failure.
The pattern is undeniable. Divine work is always particular before it is general.
It enters real geographical places at real chronological times among real people with deeply messy, highly specific histories.
So treating people as interchangeable demographics is not just a sociological error.
No, it is a profound theological failure. To ignore the specific context of a person is to ignore the very mechanism of how God operates in the world.
There is something incredibly liberating about this. If you are listening to this and you felt the crushing weight of trying to, fix a situation, whether it's your neighborhood, your workplace, or a broken family dynamic, realize that true engagement doesn't begin with having a brilliant bulletproof solution.
It begins with attention.
Right. It begins with pulling up a chair and just seeing the reality in front of you. You don't have to fix the neighborhood on day one. You just have to know it.
It is a massive paradigm shift.
Yeah.
It moves an individual or a church from being a sender of prepackaged programs to being a seer of complex reality.
A seer. I like that.
But if we agree that a generic approach fails because it treats people like demographics, we inevitably run into a physical problem.
What's that?
You cannot separate a person's individual pain from the literal street they live on. Their environment is actively, constantly shaping them.
Oh, this is where it gets really interesting. Because we are so conditioned to treat locations as interchangeable stage sets.
We think of physical space as just a neutral backdrop for our lives.
Exactly. A coffee shop in Seattle feels basically the same as a coffee shop in Austin. An apartment building is just an apartment building.
But this framework argues for a vital theology of place. Geography is not a neutral backdrop.
It is an active participant in human formation.
Yes, a neighborhood has a memory. It carries the scars of its history.
A town has deeply ingrained patterns of movement.
A local market has its own liturgies. And by liturgies, we don't mean religious chants.
Right. We mean the unconscious, repetitive rituals that dictate how people interact.
Exactly. The physical layout of a market forces certain types of interactions, creates regular schedules for buyers, and forms entirely unspoken social hierarchies.
A school zone applies specific pressures on the families within it.
The concrete environment wires the human experience in ways we rarely bring to our conscious awareness, but which dictate our daily lives.
And the theology backs this up perfectly. Jesus wasn't just born somewhere in the Middle East.
No, he was born in Bethlehem, fulfilling a specific geographical prophecy.
Right. He didn't just grow up in the countryside. He grew up in Nazareth, a town with a specific marginalized reputation.
Can anything good come from Nazareth?
Exactly. He spent his time in Galilee. He intentionally traveled through the hostile territory of Samaria to make specific sociological points, and he openly wept over Jerusalem because he knew its heartbreaking, blood-soaked history.
Even the ultimate eschatological hope, the vision of the end of the world in these texts, is deeply tied to place.
The New Jerusalem.
Right. The New Jerusalem is not depicted as some ethereal, floating cloud where humans become disembodied spirits playing harps.
It is depicted as a renewed, physical, architectural city.
Therefore, when an organization decides to truly map a community, they're not just executing a secular demographic study to optimize their marketing.
They are honoring a fundamental reality.
Yes, the reality that human transformation happens in real, tangible social landscapes. If you ignore the physical place, you're ignoring the exact canvas where the work is happening.
So if I'm leading an organization, or even just trying to understand the town I just moved to, how do I actually read a physical place without turning it into a cynical real estate exercise?
That's the challenge, right?
Yeah, I mean, I can easily look up median incomes, property values, and crime rates on Zillow or a city database. But how do I map the unseen spiritual and sociological reality?
It requires physical, bodily presence. You cannot map a community from a dashboard in a climate-controlled office.
So you have to actually get out there?
You have to walk the streets at a human pace. You have to begin observing the physical environment for what the author calls the architecture of belonging and exclusion.
The architecture of belonging and exclusion. Let's strip away the academic jargon for a second. What does that actually look like when I'm walking down the sidewalk?
It means looking at the urban planning and the literal concrete and asking, who was this space built to protect and who was it built to keep out?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Are there open, accessible public parks where multi-generational families can gather safely?
Or are there gated communities, spiked benches to prevent the unhoused from sleeping?
Yes, or massive Robert Moses-style highways that intentionally slice through low-income neighborhoods, cutting them off from economic centers.
You observe which spaces feel vibrant and alive, like a local bakery or a specific street corner.
And which spaces feel tense, abandoned, or heavily policed. You notice the transit corridors.
Like who has to ride a bus for 2 hours just to get to a grocery store?
Exactly. But observing the concrete is only step one.
Right, because the concrete only tells you what was built. It doesn't tell you what happened there. You have to read the biography of the streets.
Precisely. You have to listen to the living memory.
The living memory.
You find the longtime residents, the people who've been there for 40 years, and you just listen.
You ask how the neighborhood has changed?
You ask what major employers left and devastated the local economy. You uncover what previous institutions or city councils made massive promises and then broke them, leaving a residue of deep cynicism.
You are excavating the historical wounds of that specific geography.
Yeah.
Once you understand the physical layout, once you see the walls, the parks, the highways, and the history, you have to look even closer.
Because within that physical container, there are invisible forces moving
Right.
constantly.
You have to map the rhythms and the hidden infrastructure of trust.
This is where we move from geography to the mechanics of sociology. A community operates like a massive, complex electrical grid.
An electrical grid.
Yes. Energy moves through it in highly specific patterns, which we call rhythms. There are temporal rhythms of movement, work, rest, celebration, and silence.
And it is wild how completely organizations ignore this.
They do, constantly.
A church will parachute into a new neighborhood, set up a massive building, establish their fixed Sunday morning service at 10 a.m., maybe a Wednesday night youth group at 7 p.m., and just expect the entire neighborhood to magically adapt to their imported schedule.
It is the height of institutional arrogance. They fail to realize that the city operates on entirely different shifts.
Right. The neighborhood might pulse at 4 a.m. because it's heavily populated by bakers, transit workers, and hospital staff.
Or it might be a hospitality-heavy area that only comes alive at 11 p.m. when the restaurants close.
Some communities are entirely structured around the academic calendar of a local university.
Others are dictated by agricultural harvests or seasonal tourism.
So if an organization doesn't bother to learn the circadian rhythm of the neighborhood, they are essentially trying to force a conversation where both parties are awake at completely different times of day.
It's bound to fail.
Instead of a riptide, it's like trying to plug a delicate appliance into a high-voltage industrial outlet without checking the current first.
You're just going to blow the fuse.
You have to measure the current. But it's not just about what time people wake up and go to sleep. It's about how energy and trust flow between people.
This brings us to the most vital concept in this entire framework: the hidden infrastructure of trust.
The hidden infrastructure of trust.
When an institution arrives in a space, they often operate under the delusion that strong branding, a nice logo, or an authoritative title will automatically generate influence.
They equate institutional authority with relational credibility.
Exactly, like I'm a pastor, or I'm the CEO, so therefore listen to me.
But human beings, especially in communities carrying historical trauma or a high degree of cynicism toward outsiders, do not bestow trust based on titles.
No, trust is formed through repeated, low-stakes encounters with integrity over a long period of time.
Relational credibility is the only currency that actually matters.
So you have to identify the nodes in this electrical grid. You have to find the informal networks.
If you want to understand a neighborhood, you don't go look for the mayor or the police chief or the city councilman. You look for the actual center of gravity.
You look for the grandmother whose front porch serves as the unofficial town hall.
Oh, yeah. She is the relational hub.
She knows who just lost their job and is too proud to ask for help. She knows whose son is drinking again. She knows which kids need a quiet place to study.
You look for the bodega owner who knows the exact routine of every single person on the block.
You look for the high school football coach who spends his weekends mentoring kids who don't have fathers.
These people are the load-bearing pillars of the community.
And if we look at the historical data of the early Christian church, this is exactly how it grew.
It didn't spread merely because a few guys stood in public squares giving eloquent philosophical speeches.
No, it spread like a root system.
Yeah.
It moved along pre-existing relational lines.
Through entire households, through shared meals, through daily, quiet public witness in the marketplace.
The gospel, or any transformative idea, has to travel across the bridge of trust. If you try to bypass those local informal networks, you are trying to build a roof with no walls to support it.
But hold on, let me play devil's advocate here. Because as we talk about mapping out trust networks, finding the influential grandmother, learning the circadian rhythms of the street, well, doesn't this start to sound incredibly manipulative?
I can see why you'd ask that.
Like we are treating a neighborhood as a psychological puzzle to be solved. We are identifying the weak spots, finding the influential nodes, just so we can hack the system and inject our specific message or program.
That is the exact danger of turning discernment into a corporate strategy. And there is a massive ethical safeguard built into this methodology to prevent that.
Okay, what's the safeguard?
The guiding principle is this: data must serve love, never ambition.
Data must serve love.
If an organization maps a community to master it, to extract influence, to drive up their own attendance metrics, or to manipulate an opening for their own agenda, They are fundamentally objectifying the people.
They are violating the dignity of the very neighborhood they claim they want to serve.
It strips away their agency. They become targets instead of neighbors.
Wow, precisely. The ultimate goal of mapping is not to find a vulnerability to exploit. The goal is to honor the complexity of the community so deeply that you can serve it with actual intelligence.
You map the relational structures so you can cooperate with them, not overwrite them.
So when you find that influential grandmother on the porch, you don't try to recruit her to your program.
No. You ask how you can quietly support what she is already doing. It is about discovering where trust already lives so you can learn to be a trustworthy presence in that exact same space.
Data must serve love. If you take nothing else away from this, write that down. But here is the massive modern complication.
And it's a big one.
Observing these rhythms, finding these trust networks, sitting on the porch, it is becoming exponentially harder. And it's not because people are necessarily more hostile. It's because the physical map is being overwritten by a digital one.
The digital age is fundamentally rewiring human connection.
Yeah, the technological shift makes the internal blindness we discussed earlier much easier to maintain, and crucially, much easier to justify to a board of directors.
Digital life alters the very nature of identity and relationship. We have engineered a society where human beings are constantly connected, absolutely bathed in a fire hose of information.
Yet experiencing profound, clinically measured, epidemic levels of loneliness and isolation.
There is a line that perfectly captures this modern tragedy. We know exactly how to post, but we've completely forgotten how to confide.
Oof, that's harsh but true.
We could broadcast our curated vacations to 1,000 people, but we have no one to call at 2 a.m. when our life is falling apart.
And organizations fall right into this trap. Technology creates this seductive illusion that reach is the same thing as relationship.
It is the ultimate vanity metric. A leader can pull up a dashboard and see that 5,000 people scrolled past a video or 500 people clicked a link.
The organization tells itself, look at our incredible impact, look at our reach.
They confuse digital visibility with actual incarnate witness. But this exposes a fundamental misunderstanding of human psychology and spiritual care.
Because algorithms cannot shepherd people.
Exactly. An algorithm is designed to amplify content and capture attention to sell ads. It cannot sit in a hospital waiting room with a terrified mother.
It cannot notice the subtle shift in a teenager's posture that indicates they're severely depressed.
It cannot look someone in the eye and hold their grief. When an institution relies too heavily on digital reach, it inevitably defaults back to the generic, assumption-based ministry we condemned earlier.
Real, suffering human beings become entirely invisible, hidden behind aggregate data categories and engagement strategies.
So the antidote is what the theology calls incarnational presence.
Let's ground that term. Incarnational presence basically means you cannot mail in your empathy.
Right, you cannot automate your compassion.
You have to physically occupy the same space, breathe the same air, and suffer the same inconveniences as the people you are trying to love.
It is the absolute core of the Christian framework. The theological claim is that the divine did not stay in a pristine, distant heaven and broadcast a mass market message.
The Word became flesh.
Jesus crossed immense social, cultural, and physical barriers. He sat at literal wooden tables. He ate actual meals. He smelled the dirt of the road. And he inhabited a highly specific, messy culture.
Because salvation, or deep human healing of any kind, is never abstract. The gospel is designed to meet people in the grit of their actual reality.
You cannot effectively love a world that you refuse to physically inhabit.
If I'm leading a team or pastoring a church and I'm listening to this right now, I might be having a moment of panic. I might realize, wow, we have been completely relying on our digital dashboard. We treat our social media analytics as our primary map.
That's a very common realization.
How does an organization actually pivot back from that? How do you return to a slow, incarnational presence when the entire culture and all your competitors are obsessed with digital speed and viral scale?
The pivot requires accepting two incredibly difficult realities: proximity and long-term consistency.
You cannot rush human trust.
Incarnational presence means committing to be physically present in a community long enough for the skepticism to burn off and genuine trust to take root.
It requires the immense humility to do the slow, grueling work of learning a neighborhood's specific vocabulary, understanding their localized fears, and celebrating their unique victories.
And most importantly, it requires an absolute refusal of the arrogant, quick-fix mentality.
It is the opposite of a viral moment.
It is entirely unglamorous. Faithful presence usually looks remarkably small and unimpressive to an outside observer.
It looks like setting up quiet, unadvertised listening sessions in a church basement.
It looks like taking prayerful walks through the neighborhood without carrying any flyers or agendas.
It looks like committing to support 5 overlooked families in the neighborhood over the course of a decade, rather than hosting a flashy weekend event for 500 strangers to get a good photo for the annual report.
But if an organization actually does this, if they kill the generic events, if they ignore the digital vanity metrics, and they fully commit to this slow, grueling, hyper-relational model, everything about how they define success has to be blown up and rebuilt.
Because the spreadsheet is going to look terrible for a long time.
And this is the ultimate existential challenge of mapping for mission. It demands the complete destruction of modern corporate metrics.
Western culture, and by tragic extension, much of the modern religious landscape, is entirely addicted to quantifiable vanity metrics.
We want to measure weekend attendance, year-over-year budget expansion, and digital footprint.
Why? Because numbers are safe. Numbers give us the illusion of control, but mapping forces a radical shift toward biblical indicators of success.
And those indicators are infuriatingly hard to put on a bar chart.
Because human souls don't fit on bar charts.
Biblical indicators are deeply qualitative. We're looking for transformed lives. We are looking for the slow restoration of fractured marriages.
We are looking for the deepening of trust between different racial or socioeconomic groups within a single zip code.
Are individuals encountering grace in a way that actually alters how they manage their money, how they treat their employees, how they parent their children?
That is the true metric of mission. Furthermore, the very act of engaging in this mapping process is not presented as a slick new management strategy. It is presented as a profound act of spiritual repentance.
That word, repentance, is so often loaded with guilt. We usually hear it and think of someone weeping at an altar, turning away from some massive moral failing.
But applying it to how an organization views a city is fascinating. Mapping is repentance because it requires an institution to actively turn away from its own pride and its distorted perception of reality.
It forces the leadership to stand in front of their neighborhood and admit, we have been arrogant. We assumed we knew what you needed. We've been blind to your actual lives.
That admission of blindness is the first requirement for sight. It strips away the incredibly arrogant presumption that the church is somehow bringing God into a barren, godless wasteland.
The theological reality that underpins all of this is that the divine is already actively at work in the community long before the institution ever unlocks its doors.
The Spirit is already moving.
Convicting, comforting, opening doors, stirring up hunger for justice. The organization's job is not to invent a ministry from scratch. Its job is to have the quiet humility to recognize what is already happening and join in.
There are these brilliant ancient metaphors used to describe this dynamic, the mustard seed or the yeast working its way slowly through a massive lump of dough.
True transformative work is often agonizingly slow. It is hyper-relational. It is completely hidden beneath the surface of daily life.
And it is entirely invisible to someone who is addicted to immediate, explosive, measurable results.
Think about it like being invited to a complex, ongoing dinner party. For decades, the church has operated like it is the host of a party, demanding everyone come to their house, eat their food, and play by their exact rules.
But in reality, Christ is the host. The party is already happening out in the streets. The church is merely a guest, and it needs to learn how to humbly participate in the conversation that is already underway.
That analogy perfectly captures the relief this framework offers. It completely removes the crushing, burnout-inducing burden from the shoulders of leadership.
You do not have to manufacture transformation. You do not have to forcefully extract results from your neighborhood to justify your existence.
You simply have to be a faithful seer and a willing partner in the grace that is already flowing through the streets.
So as we pull all these massive ideas together, what is the end game? We aren't just trying to build a better sociological database.
No. The ultimate goal of mapping isn't just to have a more accurate spreadsheet of where the grandmothers live and what time the bakers wake up.
The goal is a fundamental transformation of our own perception.
Exactly. When a community of people truly learns to see their environment with this level of incarnate empathy, their entire organizational DNA changes.
They become immune to the frantic, exhausting cycle of chasing the newest ministry fad.
They stop craving novelty because they finally understand the immense, world-changing power of long-term, obscure faithfulness.
They become entirely unafraid of small beginnings because they know that massive societal shifts always begin within the quiet, hidden infrastructure of human relationships.
It's beautiful, really.
Let's look at the incredible ground we've covered today. We started by dismantling the illusion of the flat map, exposing how sincere, well-funded institutions can be entirely blind to the very people bleeding on their doorsteps.
We broke down the mechanics of the sincerity trap.
How inward focus, outdated familiarity, and the sheer fear of empathy cause us to build walls instead of bridges.
We explored the devastating danger of reductionism, where we turn beautifully complex humans into marketing demographics, and why discernment requires the humility to sit and listen.
We examine the profound theology of place, recognizing that geography is actively shaping human pain and hope.
We looked at the electrical grid of a city, the temporal rhythms and the hidden nodes of trust, and why trying to bypass those networks is a recipe for failure.
We called out the digital illusion, highlighting why 1,000 likes can never replace the incarnational presence of sitting across a table from someone in pain.
And finally, we looked at the massive ego death required to redefine success, moving away from vanity metrics to the quiet, unglamorous reality of transformed lives.
And I want to make this intensely practical for you right now. Even though the primary case study today was the church, the mechanics of attentiveness we just spent an hour unpacking are universally applicable.
Absolutely. The shift from categorizing humans to honoring their specific context is the foundation of any healthy society.
Whether you are a mid-level manager trying to understand why your corporate team is fractured, whether you just unpacked boxes in a brand new city and don't know a single soul, or whether you are just trying to decipher the unspoken tension in your own family's living room, the discipline remains exactly the same.
Slow down. Put away your assumptions. Stop trying to force your schedule on the environment.
Look for the architecture of belonging. Map the unseen relationships.
It changes everything.
So I want to leave you with one final, deeply personal question to wrestle with today. Tomorrow morning, when you walk out your front door or when you log into your first team meeting, imagine you suddenly had a pair of glasses that allowed you to see the invisible electrical grid of your environment.
If you could invisibly map the hidden infrastructure of trust, the unspoken grief, and the quiet daily rhythms of the people breathing right next to you,
What would that map reveal that you have been completely ignoring? And more importantly, once you see it, how will it change the way you move through the world? Thank you for diving into the deep end with us today. Keep looking closer, and we will catch you next time.